Okay.
We'll go into the different teaching styles of the
Yeah, I hope to, yeah. I want to include that also. Wouldn't just be like
little
a...
pieces of their teachings.
Yeah, selections of their teachings. That's a nice idea. I'll definitely describe their style.
Because you mentioned quite often that they have different styles. Sometimes.
Yeah, so I would definitely have to find
that.
samplings of that, but I would definitely include a description of their styles. Okay, Tzedek Chesed Aleph 98a. We come now to another very famous line with respect to the Mashiach's coming. And it's similar to yesterday in that having made the official distinction between the two possibilities for Mashiach's arrival, the Kulei Zakai or Kulei Chayav, on its literal level, a generation that's all worthy of Mashiach, or a generation that's all the opposite, and therefore it comes from God's prodding. So in a similar vein comes the following. And one of the comments I saw from the Rabbi actually seems to imply the reverse of what we would have thought, but as we shall see. Okay, where is it? Yeah, Omer Rabbi Alexandri, Rabbi Shua ben Levi. So the last word on the line is Yeshua. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines down from the widest set of lines, and the last word is Yeshua. So if you back up 5 words, you have Omer Rabbi Alexandri. So Omer Rabbi Alexandri said as follows: Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Dami. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi raised the following seeming contradiction. Ksiv, one verse reads, yeah, you see it there?
Yeah.
So Rabbi Alexandri stated, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Dami, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi raised the following seeming contradiction. Ksiv, it states, Bi'ita, that it'll happen in its time. That's the verse. It's in Isaiah 60:22.
The Torah for Kitava.
Yeah. It's actually one verse, yeah. Ksiv Achishena, the very next word is Achishena, which means instantaneously. So 2 words right after the other. I am God in its time, instantaneously. That's the verse. Implying that God's arrival, Mashiach's coming, is in its time, meaning to say, nothing you can do about it. Whenever I'm ready, I'm going to show up. In its due time, in its predetermined time. And then Achishena instantaneously implies right now. So which one is it? Instantaneous, or at some predetermined time? So therefore says Rabbi Shua ben Levi, and Rabbi Alexander is relating this to us, Zachu, if the Jews are meritorious, Achishena, it happens instantaneously. Lo Zachu, if the Jews are not meritorious, Be'ita comes in its time. Okay, so there's a lot to be said about this, and there are hundreds of pages, probably, and thousands of words definitely written on these 5 words. Zachu, Achishena, Lo Zachu, Be'ita. Meritorious, it comes in its instantaneous time. Not meritorious, it comes in its due time.
In due course.
In due course, whenever it's supposed to come, as predetermined by history. So the first thing I want to share on this is actually a halachic angle to this. It's an actual halachic angle. Now, it's not halacha l'maisa, which means not a halacha that we actually practice, but it is a halachic view, namely that of the Rambam. How is that? The Rambam, in his description of Mashiach's arrival, writes a description that would take quite a few years. A person comes and he collects all the people back to Israel. He compels all the Jewish people, or inspires all the people to follow the ways of Torah. He restores the Davidic line. He rebuilds the temple. A whole long description that would take a full lifetime, if things happen normally and naturally, for him to succeed in doing all those things. Take a long time. And yet the Rambam rules like this. That's why it says halacha, but not lamaisa. It's halacha because the Rambam writes halacha, but it's not lamaisa. It's not a practiced halacha, because we do not today follow this view. The Rambam writes that a kohen is not allowed to get drunk. A kohen is not allowed to get drunk. Sorry, Alan. Why?
Ever?
Yeah, ever. Why? Because
He could be on duty.
he might,
Any moment.
any moment he'll be on duty in the temple. Now the halacha is how long does it take to sober up on the minimum amount of drinking? It's something, the amount of time it would take you to walk 4 mil, or 1 mil even. 1 mil. The amount of time it would take you to walk a kilometer, roughly. So 25 minutes, 30 minutes. So if a person, for Kohen drank the minimum amount of wine, and the Rambam says he's not allowed to do that, because within the next 30 minutes, Mashiach could be here and you could be in the temple serving. And you're not allowed to be serving when you're drunk. We don't rule this way. But this is what the Rambam says. Now the question becomes, if the Rambam describes Mashiach's coming, it takes years and years, so what do you worry about the next 30 minutes Mashiach's going to be here for? There's nobody who's gathering all the people in the next 30 minutes and compelling them all to follow the ways of Torah and rebuilding a temple right now.
And performing the service.
And then within 30 minutes I'd be ready to perform the service. If the Rambam was talking about when you see a guy who's already in the process of collecting the Jewish people, he's already been successful in compelling Jews to follow the ways of Torah, and the temple's almost done. Okay, so you can't drink because you might be called up. But the Rambam's talking about forever. Right now, a Kohen cannot drink because in the next 30 minutes Mashiach would come. He might be in the temple. What does it teach you? It teaches you that even from the halachic perspective, even from the Rambam, who is the first to really codify, Bechal is the first to codify theology. We've talked about this before. The Rambam is the first to codify what Jews believe and don't believe. So even the Rambam, who gives the halachic description of Mashiach's coming, even within halacha, embeds the notion that it's possible that Hashem will completely transcend that system. Case in point, if God wants, Mashiach will come the next 30 minutes and the temple will be here and you'll be too drunk to serve in the temple. So even the Rambam, which gives a very long description of Be'ita and what it looks like when Mashiach would come in its due course, in its due time, but it's quite possible God will decide because of the merit of the Jews, Achishena, God's making it happen instantaneously, temple's ready and you're going to have to be ready to serve. You follow what I'm saying? That even within halacha, even though the official halachic description of Mashiach takes all this long time that the Rambam describes, nonetheless halacha itself acknowledges that of course it's possible that Hashem can do whatever He wants and decide to make it happen anyway within a very short amount of time. In this miraculous way.
Because Kohanim was part of the temple service?
Birchas Kohanim was part of the temple service, but more importantly, there's the actual offerings, sacrifices that the Kohen would have to perform.
And I'm just thinking because the only time we prevent a Kohen from drinking
is Birchas Kohanim.
Is when we know we're going to do Birchas Kohanim.
That's the only time.
So I thought, is that in deference to the temple service? It's sort of like a...
Well, it is one of the temple. It is one of the services, and he's not allowed to do that when he's.
It's the other way around. Temple service is the main one, and Birchas Kohanim
is secondary.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when he does any of the service in the temple, he has to be
sober.
State. But actually,
there's all kinds of questions because
if he's drunk and he does a service, that's from heaven. That's some say that a where it had too much to drink.
Sorry?
The Kohanim check the animals themselves?
Yeah, sure. No, the Kohanim shecht. They didn't have to, but
sorry, everything else is at four voted.
They didn't have to, but they did. They did anyway. I think to my best of my knowledge.
It's a Zohar, by the way, why a Kohen doesn't have to be shchita, because shchita is taking the animal. Kohen's a symbol of
chesed
and rationing, so therefore for other people. But the truth of the matter is, a Kohen can do it as well.
But they did it, I imagine, because actually the truth maybe not.
Maybe not because of the time.
No.
But they have to.
The Korban Pesach, the description of the Korban Pesach that we read is talking about the Kohen.
Yeah, all that's done. Yeah, but they
sometimes together with the depends on the situation. Sometimes together with the person.
Everything after shchita is done by the Kohen, except something the blood.
But even like I think
when
it comes to the Korban Pesach, for example, the description we read in our Pesach, if I remember correctly, describes the Kohen shechting. If I'm not mistaken, doesn't say the Kohen shechted. Maybe not. Anyway,
of course, the
bottom line is the Kohen has to be ready.
The assembly line for the
what's very interesting though is also, and this is another Pandora's box, but what's very interesting also is the fact that we're all Tamei Mason. We're all impure because we have come in contact with dead bodies. We've all gone to funerals. We've all gone to the cemetery, except for Alan. But you and Alan, so it's very difficult to refrain. You're going to a hospital, you go to here. It's very difficult to know whether you're in the same building.
For a parent, for example,
or for a parent, yeah. First, you have to go for a parent or a child. Which means that a Kohen who, under normal halachic circumstances, could not serve in the temple now because he needs 7 days of purification, still that I'm saying he shouldn't get drunk because the next 30 minutes he might have to serve in the temple. Which is a whole other question.
Well, these things happen miraculously, I suppose.
Not the cleansing. The cleansing doesn't happen miraculously, but it's more likely a tumah hutra b'tzibur or tchuli b'tzibur, depending on what your view is. Which means that if everybody is impure, then the laws of impurity get temporarily lifted until we can restore purity.
Right, because if there's ruling about if everyone's impure, right?
That's correct.
So you just mentioned.
Tumo hutter b'tzibur or toy b'tzibur. There's different views, but it's the same principle. Okay, so that's the first thing I want to mention. This halachic idea of Mashiach coming instantaneously, even though it's not lamaisa, even though it's not the practiced halacha, but it's a halacha that nonetheless exists.
My grandmother used to have a saying when I used to ask her for something. When the man will walk on the moon,
Oh
he'll
yeah,
have it. It's the same thing with this.
yeah, exactly.
When I
Man.
had a man on the moon, it's true.
It came true.
It came true, yeah.
It's very good. Yeah, there's a lot of other things that came true that we weren't expecting. Okay, that's the first thing. Now, I saw in a sikha, there's obviously a lot more that there's from the Rebbe, but just I'll share two insights that I made note of here. One is like this: there's a talk where the Rebbe is talking about. There's a famous discussion between Rabbi and Zakkai and Baisos, which means a certain form of deviant Jewish groups that existed towards a deviant sect of Jewish. What did I say?
It's a different group.
Yeah, the deviant sect of Jewish of the Jews during the period towards the end of the Second Temple and spilled over to after the Second Temple for quite a while. Actually, a lot of these groups, the Baisosim didn't last very long, but the Karaites did last quite a big time. Anyway, so the discussion described there between Rabbi and Zakkai and the Baisos with respect to, it's with respect to when you start counting the Omer, the day after Shabbos, what does that mean? And it spills into a discussion about why the Jews were in the desert for so long. That's what the Gemara describes Moshe Rabbeinu being the lover of Jewish people, so why did he take them for so long in the desert? The whole discussion going on there. And there's a long comment about it. And there comes to, basically makes the following conclusion, without taking you through the whole pilpul, not taking you through the whole back and forth. The bottom line is Rashi and the whole thing. The bottom line is it becomes like this: that the Perek Chelek is telling this Baisus, this sectarian, as you call it, say it.
Vegan.
Sorry?
No, sectarian.
Vegan.
No, a sectarian. Which means he belonged to this deviant sect from Judaism. It seems like they were pretty popular at the time.
They had the power in the temple. And had the money.
Between them and the Tzdukim, which were,
Yeah.
there's very, slight variation between the Baisosim and the Tzdukim, but they had more.
Were powerful, called the Sadducees. They call them.
Yeah, but the Baisosim are a little bit, they're like an offshoot of that.
Earlier also,
Yeah, the Sadducees in general controlled the politics in Israel. And one of the reasons why the rabbis were called the Perushim is because they were Parush, they disengaged from politics. They thought it was a silly idea to either fight the Romans or to capitulate to the Romans. Whereas the Sadducees capitulated to the Romans, and yet the Biryonim fighting the Romans, and that eventually led to destruction. But anyway, Rabbi Zakkai is literally the crux of this history. He was there negotiating with Vespasian, famously. So the bottom line that was commented about in explaining what Rabbi Zakkai said is that the fact that the Jews were in the desert for such a long period of time was so that they can get cleansed and ready to enter the land of Eretz Yisrael. And in that, there are two ways in which God and man can meet. Here we're talking about going to Eretz Yisrael, but it's a similar idea, the way in which God and man can meet. You can kind of connect this to Rosh Hashanah. One is where God reveals himself to man. And the other way is where man elevates himself to meet God.
Above to below.
I'm using the word man, meaning and this above to below to above.
Yeah.
What's the difference? And there's a virtue in both of these. When God meets man, obviously the virtue is that it's on God's terms, which would mean it's infinitely greater than anything you can possibly acquire, because you're human. No matter how great you become, you can never reach the level of divine revelation. So when God reveals himself to man, there's the virtue of it being infinite on God's terms. The downside of that is that it kind of leaves you behind. You're overwhelmed by the experience, you're not part of it. Like Matan Torah. That's right, as opposed to Purim, famously. The other version is where it goes from below to above. The virtue there is that you're actually invested in this relationship because you built up going forward. The downside is obviously that it's limited to your capacity.
Like the two luchos.
First luchos, second luchos.
Yeah.
And obviously the ultimate is a combination of both, which is where the Jew goes through the process of refinement, and at the same time the revelation is on God's terms. Both on L'Dodi V'Dodi Li, which actually, since you're connecting Tanya L'Dodi Li, the famous famous mimer from the Alter Rebbe, where it describes the story of the king in the field. He uses this pasuk, Ani Ladoidi is Elul, I am to my beloved. And Rosh Hashanah is Doidi Li, God responding. Okay, so it says they were like this. The fact that the Jews were in the desert for 40 years was because Moshe Rabbeinu, as he describes it, wanted to give the Jews the opportunity that when they get into the land of Israel, it should be because they have gone through enough time of refinement. So it should have the virtue of below to above. And then the Rebbe concludes the Sikha with a kind of cryptic line that goes something like this. It's like 2 or 3 paragraphs that the Rebbe adds, and the Rebbe throws in this Gemara. It says, the same thing is true of the length of our exile. The length of our exile is that Jews can go through the clearly very long and arduous process of slowly refining ourselves so that we can be on terms to be ready to greet Mashiach's coming, as opposed to just being from above to below. And then there adds the following line. Oh, so that would be Be'ita. That would be Be'ita. Be'ita means when Mashiach comes in its due time, right? Mashiach coming in its due time means it's taking this very long time. And that's so that we can get the virtue of below to above, where we get refined. But then there is like this. What happens if a Jew, this is a beautiful thing, what happens if a Jew rushes up rushes the refinement? What if Jews rush their refinement? So if a Jew rushes their refinement, so you have both virtues. Mashiach's going to come on the Jew's term because the Jew refined himself. But because he did a refining process faster than the set time, Mashiach comes on God's terms because God says, okay, we have to bring Mashiach quicker. Isn't that amazing? Nifid ever says that we can actually combine both Be'ita and Achishena. You could have the virtue of the refinement because because we're speeding up the process, as it were, and at the same time it has the virtue of Achishena that God's responding. It comes on God's terms in this like instantaneous fashion, and therefore we can have the combination of both. And then the adds, especially considering that kolu kol hakitzin, especially considering that the Gemara declared, we learned this before, all the ends have already come. As if it's all done. No explanation there, he just throws that line in there. And it concludes, may it happen, seeing the speeding nowadays, etc. That's one comment from the Rebbe about this. Ita and Achishena, how it could be a combination of both. Not that they're one or the other, but they could be the virtues of both. The virtues of below to above, and then it takes the process of our refinement, and the virtue of above to below, and that the revelation is God's response on God's terms. That's one comment. The second comment is, this is kind of it's actually very, I don't want to say I was shocked, but I was very wowed to read this from the Rebbe. The context there is it's the 20th of Av, it's the Rebbe's father's yahrzeit. And there the Rebbe cites to what's known in this as Bichalach, which means it's a booklet, a handwritten manuscript booklet. They found of a mimer that exists in Chabad library, of a mimer from the 3rd Chabad Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek, whose yahrzeit coming up on Erev Rosh Hashanah. His birthday's coming up on Erev Rosh Hashanah, sorry. And so it hadn't been published yet. I think it's published by now, but it hadn't been published yet. And they're sharing what's written in this manuscript. And there, the Tzemach Tzedek says that Be'ita and Achishena can be in a person's own personal life. How's that? And it's amazing that I read this from the Rebbe. I was wowed. That here the Gemara says Achishena, if it happens instantaneously, it's zachu because they're meritorious. So the word zachu, which means meritorious, could also mean zach, which means refined. Right? It's a similar term. So if a Jew is refined, then achishena, then a person might pass away earlier than he's supposed to. Isn't that amazing? Whereas someone who's less refined, the person needs to go through his whole full life to get his job mission done. Why is Rebbe saying this? Rebbe saying this in context of his father. His father, as we once talked about here, he's exiled by the communists for his counter-revolutionary activity and passed away very young. And therefore they were saying in that context that he was on such a high level that he was zachu, he was refined so early in life that he actually died achishena, he died quicker than the time, as opposed to Be'ita in his due time. It's quite an amazing thing to be hearing from the Rebbe. And the Rebbe goes on to talk about different Jews in history who died at a very young age, who accomplished huge amounts. It's kind of like it's like an almost unknown factor, an unknown factor, but it's one of those things in Jewish history. We had these people who accomplished this crazy amount of stuff in a very short amount of time, and then they just died very young, wrote tons of books and did a bunch of things. Never cites to quite a few of those. But then the Rebbe brings it into personal life that you and I can relate to. It says like this, that the two modes of service of Ita and Achishena in his due time and instantaneous can be reflected in two ways of serving God. One is known as b'derech dilug, which means a person jumps into the service. Wherever he is in a state, and he comes to this conclusion, where I am is terrible, I need to go somewhere, I have to change my life around. And he jumps from 0 to 100 in when you do you rev up a car, what's the word?
A rev.
You accelerate from 0 to 60 and before you get to the stop sign at the end of the block. He jumps right into the end, dives into the deep end in 1 second, jumps and extreme change. So it says there, but when you're doing that, if you're climbing up in your service and you do that, it's a bit dangerous. It's dangerous because you haven't really earned that level, and because you haven't earned the level, you just dived into it, you can very easily lose it. So therefore, when it comes to climbing up the ladder of service of Hashem, it should be bi'ita, not achishena, instantaneous, but bi'ita in its time. Slowly go one level, earn that level, go to the next level, earn the next level, and slowly climb your way so that every level you get to, you actually have earned it, you've earned your place, and from there you can move to the next level. And therefore it's got to be la'at la'at. Slowly, not dilug. La'at la'at, slowly, one level after another level, one shlav, one stage after the other. But then there is one circumstance in which dilug, jumping, is appropriate. And when's that? When you're jumping downward. Meaning to say, when a person's at a spiritual high, he shouldn't think that I'm not going to go straight from my spiritual high into my mundane matter. Let me slowly get myself comfortable in mundane matters, and then I'll go back down. You don't want to get comfortable with the mundane matter. So actually you should jump there. With the whole spiritual fervent excitement that you have, go right, let me wait until I get comfortable with my mundane life and slowly make my way down, and then you do that and you're getting yourself comfortable in mundane life. You don't want that. You've earned your place in this very lofty level, and from there you go straight from there right into your business. That uses the model of the morning. In the morning, a person's in a spiritual connectivity. He learned Chassidus, he davened, he had a Gemara shir, and then so he's going to slowly trickle down into his work. No, spiritual higher, and from there go straight into work. And when you come into work, you come into your mundane matter. You look at it as a foreigner, because you just came from this lofty spiritual place, and that's what we want. It's healthy. You should feel like a foreigner. Like when you're jumping to spiritual levels, you don't want to feel like a foreigner there. So you got to earn your place. But when you're jumping down into mundane reality, you should feel like a foreigner. So there should be dilug. And then it goes even forward and says that it was this is the early years that were speaking in a very close terms with the people in the crowd, as you can hear. So there were talks about a bachar in yeshiva, a student in yeshiva. So I might think, okay, so when I'm done yeshiva, I'm going to get a job, slowly get acquainted with the world around me, and then I'll slowly, once I'm ready, then I'll get married. And then by the time he gets married, his yeshiva years are some years behind him. He forgot what it was like to live in that kind of life where it's all spirituality. He says, no, till the last second, he's fully invested in yeshiva life and his spiritual life. And then from there, he takes all that energy and goes right into his marriage, and then bringing all that entire intensity energy with him. So this also connects to where we're going in Tishrei. We're already on this journey, but we're about to enter the real part of the journey where we're going to climb higher and higher ladders in our spiritual achievements. So it's been a whole month, and it's going to be another whole month. So God willing, as we go along, we're actually going to earn those levels, and then from there we'll take all that energy. That's the point. We should know that now already, that we're soaking up all this energy. Then we come after Simchas Torah, come after Shabbos Bereshis, we jump right back into our mundane world, feeling like foreigners in our own land, which is not a bad thing.
Just wearing Esav's clothes, that's all.
Sorry? You're wearing Esav's clothes.
But we're not Esav.
But you're not Esav.
Yeah.
You feel like a foreigner in your own reality. It's not such a bad thing if you feel like a foreigner in the mundane world, because you and yourself belong to spiritual life. And the truth is, Rebbe doesn't say this here, but Rebbe talks about this elsewhere, that that's the key to changing the world. When we talk about the mission of a Jew to change and elevate the world, if you become part of the world, then you're part of the problem, not the solution. If the solution is you're supposed to change the world to make it a more godly place, then the first condition is you should know you're not part of this world. You're a godly entity that happens to be walking around this world, and then you can change it. But if you feel like you're a man of this world, then you're no longer part of the solution. You've succumbed to the problem, God forbid.
That's actually the way the non-Jews look at us anyway.
They do.
If we went by that you just said,
They'll remind us.
No, no, if we went
Yeah.
away with this, it would be more. There would be more. The relationship would be more real.
Yeah.
It's when we pretend that we're, I'm wearing this, but I'm really like you too.
Yeah.
They don't want that. They know he's.
You're Jewish. They expect you to be different.
But you're even though you're wearing, let's say, normal clothes, we know that you're different. You should reinforce that, not pretend that we are not.
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
It's when we fake it that they know he's a fake. He's a fake.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the last Gemara share for this year, Tavshin Ayin Tes, and yeah. So take the opportunity to wish everybody a good Kibbutz Jar, a healthy, successful year, and may this year Tavshin Pei 5780, that's the year we're going into, Tehei Shnas Peduseinu. May this be the year of our redemption. We're learning about Mashiach here, and the coming of the redemption. May this year indeed be the year of Peduseinu, our ultimate redemption. Geula she'ein achara galus, a redemption after which there is no exile, in the ultimate celebration with all Yidden and with Hashem together in Eretz Yisrael. It be now. A good bench dior. Shir Samecha, exactly. Good bench dior.